Welcome back to the NAIAFBALL live show, powered by AdCraft Custom Apparel and Merch, your custom apparel, merch, and uniform experts since 1974, which honestly it probably makes it older than Matt and I put together. But you got both of us back this week. Matt, boy, it was a rough week for ranked teams. It didn't matter what level you were at.
Yeah, a lot of chaos this week, which I feel like we were kind of due for, but it has made like the back half of the top 25 an absolute nightmare. I think more so than it has been. So, especially with playoff talks kind of on the horizon, there's a lot of interesting things to go over from this weekend.
First off, before we get there, let's thank our friends on UEN. If you're watching this on the UEN app or website, thank you very much. UEN definitely changing the game for the better. And if you are a mobile watcher like me, figured out this week they made a bug fix, which allowed me to watch games in landscape, which greatly enhances the watchability of games on mobile. But Matt, this week's vocabulary word for NAI games. Yep, that's we're going to talk about turnovers.
Sorry, the animation is killing me.
The animation is just I love it. It's amazing. It's so ironically perfect. All right, first up, the Franciscan Bowl, and you'll see what I'm talking about here, Matt. Joshua Kulka, 4 interceptions on 29 throws. Now, no, 4 interceptions does not a 49-0 game rectify, but
he solidly confirms that Marion's a top 8 team in the country right now at the moment. St. Francis, for the first time all year, looked like they had nothing. No offense, defense can hold. It was just Marion dominance, and I don't really know if there's much else to say besides that. The scoreboard tells it pretty well. The box score tells it pretty well, and from what I saw with my own 2 eyes, it pretty much what happened.
Yeah, Marion took the cat by the tail and absolutely swung it around a few times. Who did not get the cat by the tail, in this case the tiger, was Lindsey Wilson, which, to be fair, it's a really good game.
Mm-hmm.
But again, for the turnovers, Tate Rice, 2 picks on the day. Max Gainey, which, side note, is a fantastic name for a wide receiver.
It's true.
5 receptions, $133. Lindsey just not quite as efficient on 3rd and 4th downs as they needed to be. Campbellsville was 5 of 10, which tells me that they didn't get to 3rd down a whole awful lot, and when they did, they were able to convert on it.
Yeah, I was really impressed by the offensive effort of Campbellsville here. Jet Engel and Trey Bass they're one of the scariest duos in the country at the moment. The fact that Trey Bass is a guy who gets it done for you in the run game and is also your leading receiver threat for the most part, that's a do-it-all guy. Absolute game breaker, and ultimately, with their offensive effort, like Lindsey Wilson's a very good team, and they put up a good fight. But Campbellsville able to come out on top, especially even after letting up, 2 touchdowns in the 4th quarter here to Lindsey Wilson?
Yeah. So, an attempt to come back, just coming up short. Now, Matt, another attempt that came just up short was one that, I don't know that I saw coming. And that was a blocked PAT that gave Northwestern a 14-13 win. Unranked Northwestern over number 3 Morningside. And again, we return to our vocabulary word of the day, turnovers. Zach Chevalier, 3 picks on the day, where you any additional points off of any of those 3 drives would have won the game for you.
Yeah. Very uncharacteristic here from Morningside. Just straight up, especially I got to see them play Dakota Wesleyan quite literally the week before this game. And they looked really good. The defense probably isn't up to the level to where they've seen recently, but the offense looked as good as ever. Northwestern, like this rivalry game we talked about for the first time not really being noteworthy going into it, and Northwestern gave us a reason to talk about this because really impressive effort from the Northwestern defense. I think, too, it's kind of important to note special teams for Northwestern and field position playing a really big role in this one, especially when you have Luke Jeltma on, which, by the way, really fun name there. All 5 of his punts landing inside the 20-yard line.
Ooh.
I think that is a huge stat line that plays into how the Morningside offense was set up for a good chunk of this contest. And when you talk about that hitting yardage that's available on special teams, I think that it's really important to point out performances like that.
Yeah, it really is. And to point out, this was a rainy game, which rainy games in Iowa in late October just not sound like fun to me. Apparently, if you're an offensive lineman, that sounds like a whole lot of fun. Nope.
Yeah.
Nope, not it.
Oh.
And as we continue on here on our vocab of turnovers, I'll tell you that Friends just did not have, like, it might have had one fumble. And when you only throw the ball twice, it's really hard to get picked off more than once. And when you don't put the ball on the ground, you're going to win the game. McPherson comes out hot and starts it with a big first quarter. And then the rest of the game, that Friends defense just shut the spigot off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Really interesting for Friends because I feel like the only spot of maybe concern for them this season has been turning the ball over. Obviously, with as much as they run the ball, you're prone to fumble one every once in a while, just playing that style. But they really locked it in. I'm sure ball security has been a big point of emphasis, especially when your offense is this high-powered. It's really the only thing that can slow you down. And they didn't turn the ball over, like you said. So we saw Kavonte Baker pretty much at his best in all phases of the game, really efficient on third down, being able to have those short, chunk yardage plays that either snowball into big plays or, set up very manageable third and fourth down conversions for you.
Absolutely. And a great game there. I mean, yeah, it's a 24-point win, but Friends is doing worse than that to most everyone else. So it's not the worst for McPherson.
Certainly.
Going out west, we had another, upset. College of Idaho upsets Montana Western 28-21. Do want to call the Yote defense here and give them a shout out. Michael Palandri, 10 attempts, negative 10 yards, and a touchdown, which means that even on non-sack plays, you're talking about 7 attempts for 20 yards, which is 3 yards a carry for Palandri. Even when you're not sacking him, you're limiting the amount of scramble yardage he was able to get. You kept Eli Norse under 100 yards, and you kept Montana Western out of the red zone. They were 50% in the red zone, but you only gave them 2 chances. And most times that's going to give you a great chance to win the ball game.
Yeah, College of Idaho they were steady the entire time, the way their offense ran, the way they were able to kind of wear down the opposing Montana Western offense and not give them much room to work with, especially when you can keep them out of the red zone and not only, can you limit big plays from there, but depending on the weather and circumstances, NAIA kickers are certainly not a guarantee to hit field goals. It's huge. It really is to see College of Idaho have an effort like this defensively. They really impressed me in this one for sure. Any team that's been able to limit Palandri on the ground has beaten this Montana Western team, and College of Idaho took the formula, ran with it, and it worked. And now College of Idaho, getting another rung up the ladder in the Frontier, and Montana Western essentially is at this point knocked out of contention unless something crazy happens, which is wild to say because they're still a top 25 team. They're still really good. It's just the Frontier Conference is doing its usual thing.
And it could continue to do its usual thing. Let's be perfectly honest. It could continue to do its normal thing, and Montana Western could be right back in it. You did speak earlier about Marion needing another big statement game. Well, a team that I thought really needed a big statement game was Kaiser, and boy, did they get one. Holy Christmas. To borrow the phrase from the Division I football and the Georgia Bulldogs, Kaiser stepped on St. Thomas' throat with a hobnail boot. There was no let off. They were putting them in the ground. St. Thomas held the ball for 16 minutes. That's one quarter.
It's absurd. Absolutely absurd.
You can't win like that. And not throwing 9 for 26 either. The Kaiser defense came to play. The Kaiser offense came to play. Jaden Miller, 24 attempts, 118 yards, third and fourth down conversions. You were 8 of 16. Shea Spencer was efficient and added yards on the ground, 7 attempts for 40 yards. Look, this is what I've wanted to see out of Kaiser the entire season. Didn't get to see it against Bethel. But I've been waiting for this game to say, all right, Kaiser, you are who we think you are. Your defense, which is where I had the most questions. Your defense is elite. Let's move you up, slide you up in the rankings.
Yeah, it was extremely impressive here from Kaiser. And I feel like this result, we kind of have a more defined line in the sand as to where the top 10 shakes out. How good are these really good teams? How good is the top 5 compared to the rest of the top 10? We're starting to see that these top 4, top 5 teams maybe have cut above the field at this point, which is really interesting because I feel like, usually we have a better idea of kind of how the middle of the field works at this point in the year. So it's really funny to see how, the top of the top 25 is really defining itself, and pretty much everything beyond like 17 is just who knows.
That is no joke. And then our nightcap, another upset, Baker. And let me tell you, Chris Wiener, sick, home with the flu, but he got a big dub this week. Matt, this is the Baker result that we've been hoping for all season. This, like the performance that the Wildcats put out on Saturday, that's what we've been expecting all season.
Yep, they've recovered from the initial stumble that they took at the beginning of the year. And granted, your losses to William Penn and Grandview in hindsight now, like those aren't bad losses to have. Certainly opening the season with the loss against Peru State, though, will get you out on the wrong foot for a good stretch of time. Peru State is obviously a very solid team in their own right, but certainly not the result that a ranked Baker squad wanted to start the year. Getting one back on Mid-American Nazarene to continue their momentum. This is their 3rd straight win after a convincing win over William Woods and beating Missouri Valley. They found their footing again. Now, granted, I don't know what this means in terms of top 25. If they're going to be in the conversation, we may need to see another week or two of production from them. But certainly with the way Truman Yulesgaard's been playing and how he played in this game, you're in pretty good hands to be able to continue the momentum.
Speaking of the Owls of William Woods, they got their first ever program victory on Saturday.
Wow.
And if I would have been prepared, I would have had that loaded up and ready. A 36-35 win over Moval. What a team to get it over. One.
Yeah.
And then secondly, it's good to get off the schneid. Let me tell you, that one was one that they have needed. So, how does that shake out the media poll? Well, there's going to be some shaking, that's for sure and certain. But death taxes And Grandview number 1, and being unanimously so. Grandview up on top. Benedictine at number 2, unchanged there. Kaiser up 1 to number 3 as I slide my stuff over, or at least attempt to. Montana Tech staying at number 4 after being on a bye. Friends up 1 to number 5. Campbellsville up 2 to 6. Marion up 1 to 7. Dordt enters the top 10, rises 3. Lindsey Wilson stays in the top 10, down 2. Carroll rounds out the top 10 after a 2-point rise. Indiana Wesleyan up 2 spots to 11. Morningside down 9 spots. I feel that's appropriate given that you're really just, most people can't figure out a way to rank Northwestern, which is completely fair. And so a nearly 10-place penalty there for Morningside seems pretty appropriate. Ottawa of Arizona, the last ranked undefeated squad, up 1 spot to 13. Southwestern up 2 spots to 14. St. Thomas down 7 spots to 15. College of Idaho up 2 to 16. Olivet Nazarene up 3, up from 20. A tie for 18th, up 3 for McPherson, down 3, or up 3 for Georgetown, down 3 for McPherson. William Penn and Evangel both up 4. Southeastern up 1. Concordia re-enters the chat. Montana Western down 7. That is a 16-spot slide in the last 2 weeks after losses to College of Idaho and Carroll. I'm sure they will want to play someone else whose name does not begin with C. And Texas Wesleyan re-enters the poll. Now, one thing I will point out are some really big distinctions. Lindsey Wilson, 152 points at number 9. Carroll, 139 points at 10. Very clear demarcation right there. College of Idaho, 92 points at number 16. Olivet Nazarene at 17, 67 points. Another clear line of demarcation. And then at the bottom, the one that is the starkest of all to me, Montana Western with 29 points. Texas Wesleyan with 6. There is a sharp fall off after number 24. Now, granted, this week we have more than 3 receiving votes. Kind of everyone is trying their hand at throwing some spaghetti at the wall and seeing what sticks for more than a week. Our receiving votes is a 3-way tie between Baker, Mid-American, Nazarene, and Northwestern. A 3-way tie between Dakota State, Florida Memorial, and St. Francis of Indiana. A 2-way tie between Bethel, Tennessee, and Kansas Wesleyan. Peru State, and a 2-way tie with 1 vote apiece of St. Xavier and Taylor. So, again, after Montana Western, it's 6 votes, 3 at 5, 3 at 4, 2 at 3, 1 at 2, and 2 at 1. Matt, it really is spaghetti at a wall.
Yeah, it's a really interesting distinction to make at this point, that it's like 24 and then everybody else. I also think kind of in this bottom part of the top 25, something that's interesting, we have Evangel at 21. We're still very high on Evangel. In the official NAIA poll, they're only receiving votes, which, you know, kind of how we've been talking about Evangel all season. It's just interesting that that's how this is still shaken out. And besides that, there's not much really different. I mean, we have the same general idea for 2/3 of this. Flip-flop a couple teams from like 1 rank apart, and like we match the official NAIA poll pretty closely in that regard.
The couple things that I'm going to point out. It is good that we are nearing kind of a real consensus on who our top 25 are, even if it's the top 24, because we're going to have to cut down to 20 at some point. And we know that more than likely you're going to have one of these squads that's not going to make it because of the fact that either Reinhardt or U-Pike are gonna take an auto bid.
Mhm.
So you could have some bid thieves in here, like say if Texas Wesleyan rocks up and beats Ottawa. That's going to steal a bid away from someone who deserves it. And we really and truly are going to have some teams that are a cut above the rest, I think, that are not going to make it into the playoffs this year. I mean, just like every year, but this year it's going to feel sharper, I think, because of the fact that there are just at 25 teams that are deserving.
Yeah, for sure.
And after that, we will be back with more NAIA football. But until then, we'll hear a word from our friends at AdCraft.
So you want to create and sell custom merch for your team or business. That's exciting, but where do you begin? How much inventory should you order? How do you distribute orders? AdCraft has your answers. Streamline the way you offer custom merch by utilizing our risk-free web store service. We ship directly to each customer, and we have the fastest turnaround in the game. Raise funds for your team or get merch to your employees and patrons. Contact AdCraft today and let's bring your merch to life.
And that is what they are doing for us, hopefully into this year. Get you some Christmas NAIAFBALL gear. I don't think we'll have any Christmas actual designs, but, you know, Christmas presents and all that jazz. Great folks to work with, and we highly recommend them for your team. Another person we highly recommend for your team is Connor Darnell, whether it's graphics work, whether it's bag tags. Now he's making them for the darn bananas, or at least some players for the bananas. My guy is starting to hit the big time here, and is never too big for his NAI roots. Connor Darnell making some great bag tags and also helping us out with our look so that we look clean as usual. We highlight him because all of this is his work, including the players of the week. And Matt, there were two performances that to me stood head and shoulders above the rest. And the first one is Arjun Lotha from Indiana Wesleyan, 17 of 24 for 355 yards and 7 touchdowns and an interception. But more than 10 yards per attempt. That's a little less than a third of your entire passes went for touchdowns. Almost half of your completions went for touchdowns. It's a good day at the office.
Yeah, not too shabby. Like rookie mode numbers, right? Like that's just absurd. No matter how good or bad an opponent is, like that is in any capacity super impressive. There were a couple other like decent performances around the country. A lot of like 3 touchdown days.
Yeah.
Receivers had a good day. A couple of running backs stood out, but it's can't really top 7.
No.
You know what I mean?
Can't.
So yeah, completely understand Indiana Wesleyan off the back of Lotha here having a good resurgence to their season.
And then on the defensive side, it's another guy who was playing on rookie mode, Anthony Thompson. I'm sure he got a user lurk as he had 3 interceptions, including a pick 6 to go along with 8 tackles. My guy was making sure it happened both through the air and on the ground defensively.
Yeah, just an absurd stat line. I feel like we've seen a lot of these crazy defensive stats so far this year, which is really fun. That means that defenses are having a good year overall, which is always welcome. And Mayville State, they squeaked one out against Montana State Northern, didn't they?
Yep, sure did.
So,
thank you, Corey Erickson from the Hillsboro Banner, for that image. That's a good one of Anthony. So moving on to the play call of the week. And boy, this is a fun one. You know, so often we got to, you know, use our football skills to break down why it's a great play call. I don't know. I think this one's pretty apparent. See if we can get this one to come up.
and some misdirection
here.
from Miles Russ.
I forgot to rewind it. All right, Kaiser versus St. Thomas, and using the speed against St. Thomas. Let's have a look.
Spencer in the shotgun's got two receivers on either side. In the backfield with him is Rico Portia. They hand it end around. It's a fake. Miller across the 20, 15, 10, 5. Stretching forward. Is he in? Yeah, he is. Jaden Miller from 20 yards out. Pulling a rabbit out of the hat. And some misdirection from Miles Russ and the Kaiser Seahawks.
Absolutely fantastic play call there, Matt. You always say against a team with speed, it's hard to do misdirection, but in this case, you're able to affect the eye discipline of the St. Thomas defense, and you're able to get it in for 6. Break that call down a little for me.
Yeah, I mean, it ultimately comes down to how much do you trust your guys to execute, because a play like that can go wrong in a million different ways. And usually when you practice these, when you start practicing them, they go wrong in a lot of ways, and you kind of see that unfold as you get better at running it. It's really impressive to be able to spot a situation where this play is applicable and you feel like you can get one over on your opponent. And they certainly did. Really reminds me of like 2008 Boise State Fiesta Bowl plays that are famous that you see in highlight videos all the time, or like a Statue of Liberty, like just something really interesting that even if you're ready for a trick play per se, just the way it messes with your eyes and the way that it messes with the game flow, it just throws you off, you know?
Yeah, getting you going against the grain. That's always a fun one. And man, Matt, as if we didn't have enough fun last week with all these great games, we've got like 6 more really goodness. Kind of get it back together and not have one loss become 2 against a Southeastern team that's looking to prove that they should be the number 2 squad in the Sun Conference.
Yeah, finally getting some questions answered about how everything's shaken out. Going to get a very defined 2-3 here. Really interested to see how St. Thomas is going to bounce back, especially after what was pretty dominant performance from Kaiser, especially with how big that game was. You have to be able to rebound.
Yep, absolutely. This one at home for St. Thomas, so definitely good to be back in front of your home crowd. That one away at Kaiser. Maybe being at home with your own home cooking might help out a little bit there. Marion has to have a game after their rivalry game, which can be hard to do. They travel to Bourbonnais and play at Olivet Nazarene, a team, Matt, that we have been, specifically us, I feel like have been talking about when no one else has been talking about it. Now, some other folks are starting to pick up on all of that. But now we've got a put up or shut up game for Olivet Nazarene. Can they get it done against an opponent who just curb stomped a top 25 opponent?
Yeah, and you want to talk about a definitive win for Marion last week and really seeing where they're at in the national scale. Now you get the same on the flip side for Olivet Nazarene because they're playing Marion. Pretty much the barometer for this game and where Olivet Nazarene's going to shake out. If they can have a good performance, you're going to be knocking on a playoff spot. So definitely want to bring your best to this one. Really curious to see if Marion's dominant performance last week makes you feel a bit, I don't want to say like overlooking your opponent, but certainly can feel that way, especially when you're on top of the world like that. But Marion's very good, so I'm curious to see how all of it Nazarene can shape up there.
On the other side of that matchup, St. Francis of Indiana has to travel to St. Xavier. Now, St. Xavier is the hottest team that is still, or that has a loss on their record. Winners of 5 in a row since going 0-2 to start the season. I think, the most obvious answer is that some some cat mascot's going to win this game.
You'd think, right? You'd think. But yeah, this one's really intriguing to me because I feel like for St. Xavier, the past few weeks we've kind of talked about how they're kind of coming up and how they've put together a lot of wins. It's really interesting too that a lot of them they've had to gut out. Last week was a 10-0 win. You win a close one against Siena Heights for your homecoming game. You have a pretty dominant performance against Defiance and Lawrence Tech, but Madonna's a 2-score game. And especially after losing your first two in the fashion that they lost. Really interesting to see how they're going to stack up against St. Francis, who's on the back foot and potentially looking to find some life in this contest for the rest of their season, truthfully, because they'll need it. Really excited for this one, especially because St. Xavier's been so quiet such a good portion of the year.
Yeah, definitely. And receiving votes now for the first time, I think in like almost 2 years, and very much deserving. We'll see, if they can. This is basically a game to remain in the receiving votes, kind of a play out. Grandview at Mid-American Nazarene. How much can the Pioneers pick themselves back up by their bootstraps? And maybe Baker was a little bit of a look-ahead game?
Maybe. I think it's also interesting, Grandview's mindset going into this one. They had a little bit of a scare last week on Thursday, the only Thursday night game. They were down 17-7 at half to Peru State. They did end up pretty dominant fashion in the second half, winning that one. But certainly, maybe showing some cracks in the armor here. Maybe a chance for Mid-American Nazarene to get back at it. I would honestly expect, though, with Grandview and how they do things, they'll probably be hair on fire, ready to run somebody over after last week, get things right.
You want to talk about a team that will have their hair on fire, or it's or it's going to be game over for them, and that is Morningside. After a loss to an unranked opponent, now has to play a ranked opponent in Concordia of Nebraska, this one at Morningside. But if I know Steve Ryan and that Morningside coaching staff, this week of practice is going to be very fun for the Morningside players, I imagine, after that loss. And this will definitely be a cultural barometer for this season. You can have an overall culture like Morningside's had for the past, feels like almost a decade now. But
pretty much has been, yeah.
Every season it gets put to the test. And right now, will the Mustangs be able to bounce back strong?
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting, especially with Concordia and their recent results. I think Concordia is looking to take advantage of Morningside while they're down, but like you mentioned, I really don't expect Morningside to be unprepared for this one. I think they will be ready to go, to put it lightly.
And then in our day cap, 2:30 p.m. being the nightcap just seems just weird enough to not say. Friends at Southwestern, going to be a fantastic game. Friends fallen behind against McPherson, comes back against them. Southwestern at times has not looked dominant. And this game right here, if Friends win, will basically darn near sew up that side of the conference for them.
Yeah. And the way they've been playing, I would expect them to put up a bunch of points again. But I think Southwestern can match that. I think for the first time this season, Friends is going to be going up against an offense that is comparable in how high-powered they are. And I think Southwestern, too, has been an interesting case this year because while they haven't been dominant in all their games, they have been winning, which can't be said for a lot of the teams in the top 25 that were above them for a good chunk of the year. And we talked about St. Xavier quietly, being on a hot streak. Southwestern has also very quietly climbed up the rankings. So definitely a prove-it game for them to, see where they're at on the national scale and how legit that ranking is for them.
Some other ones that we're looking at, that are games of note. Midland at Dort.
Mhm.
Just for the love of the rivalry, Dickinson State at Valley City State. Campbellsville at Cumberland. You got a real high for you if you're Campbellsville against Lindsey Wilson. Can you keep it going against Cumberland? The game for the bottom of the G-Pack, Dakota Wesleyan versus Waldorf.
Thanks for that.
You're welcome. You're you're very welcome. I have to make that.
You
post.
said it, I suppose.
I had to get that in.
One I kind of have my eyes on is Bethel, Tennessee at Cumberland's.
That's a good one too. Cumberland's is not having a fantastic season. That's going to be a really interesting one. One that is going to be completely out of left field. I'll have to explain it. College of Idaho at Eastern Oregon.
Okay.
If you look at the Frontier standings, somehow Eastern Oregon is tied for first.
Look at them. They're 2-0.
Right.
In conference play.
Right. And so, out of absolute nowhere, this becomes one to keep your eye on, not necessarily from a rankings perspective, but from a conference race perspective. Carroll and College of Idaho will play later. That one is going to be another playoff game within the division, but this is basically setting up this best of three here between Carroll College of Idaho and Eastern Oregon. Eastern Oregon, obviously College of Idaho this week, then travels to Dillon to play Montana Western, at home against Simpson, and then away at Carroll at Helena. And so, you still got three really good teams to go, but right now, you're probably feeling real good about yourself if you're Eastern Oregon. If you want to shock the nation, go out and beat College of Idaho, dude.
I think it's also really important to note here, they opened their season against College of Idaho at College of Idaho and lost by 4 points. It was 21-17 final score. You're hosting them this time around? You felt like you probably were close in the last matchup? I don't know.
Gotta keep your eyes
you might
on
be
it.
onto something there, Corey.
You gotta keep your eyes on it. Yeah, Sean Chamberlain, 2029, talking about Arjun, saying he only played 2 quarters. Well, he won
Ridiculous.
like 71-21. All right. Our fantastic patron, Zach Lance, has come up, Matt, with some possibilities for us for our current at-large bids. He's got a pool of 8, which I think he's got one too many looking at it, because I think there are 13 divisions and conferences. I don't mind showing this on screen. Let me check myself if I can find my crap around here somewhere. Like I said, I got to find my crap around here somewhere. My intricate bit of stuff. Let's see. 1, 2, 3 with the Frontier. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Yes. So 8 is one too many. But here's the list. Southeastern, Georgetown, Lindsay, Morningside, College of Idaho, McPherson, Southwestern, St. Thomas. All right, I'm going to go. I'm going to go back to, just for my reference, the media poll, just to give myself an idea here.
I think the McPherson Southwestern game that is in a couple of weeks is potentially for the team left out.
And I would say the same is going to happen between. I don't know if the Sun gets 3 in.
Yeah,
I think,
probably not.
I think if Southeastern ends up losing, they
Yeah.
drop out. Now, and one I would put in here that I think is one that you don't have in here is William Penn.
Mm,
And I think
yeah.
I think you would be able to get that, and I think that might be at the expense of one of the Sun teams.
Yeah, probably.
Other than that, that sounds about right. I think you're right with, you said McPherson Southwestern?
Yeah.
Yeah, is a playoff, is an effective playoff game. Who does Evangel have left?
Yeah, I'm not sure. They only have one loss, I think, right?
They have 2.
They have 2. Okay. William Penn has one loss. That's what I'm thinking of. Yeah, William Penn, I think, just with the rest of their schedule too, at Clark versus Peru State versus Graceland at St. Ambrose.
That's
So
fairly cakey.
as long as you hold serve there.
Evangel is at Avila, at Tabor versus Bethel versus Bethany, which is cakey as well. Let me look at the KCAC standings, because you might have another bid, quote unquote bid thief. It's not a bid thief because it's off the other side of the division. Right now, it's really, really, really super early.
Mm-hmm.
Evangel will take that side more than likely. That's why they're not on there. They're 1-0, tied with Tabor and Avila in the Kessinger. Friends Southwestern and Kansas Wesleyan are 1-0. McPherson, St. Mary, and Sterling are 0-1 in division. It is really, really super early, especially in the KCAC. I started looking at these on Saturday when I had a little bit of time, and I'm just sitting there like going, it is late October, and it feels like I should be able to call locks.
Yeah, I don't know. Feels weird. Feels more spaced out, especially as a GPAC guy, because
Yeah,
that's just our whole season.
right. Now, I do feel confident in calling probably at least one of these, and that's Ottawa. I think Ottawa's a lock. I think even if they lose to Texas Wesleyan, the body of work will steal a bid.
Yeah, probably.
For them. That's kind of the and I'd have to keep looking at it. Let's see how far the MSFA is in. Nope, wrong year. Okay, so they don't have one up yet. Hang tight. Let me go back to home for football.
Georgetown's also an interesting one to keep your eyes on, I think, because the rest of their schedule's at Bethel, at Cumberland's, and they close the year against Campbellsville.
Ooh, you might could play your way out.
Yeah, you have to pretty much. I mean, the only loss you can afford is maybe to Campbellsville, and even then.
Yeah, no, 100% on that. Yeah, it's still really early in the mid-states. Marion, Olivet, Nazarene, St. Xavier tied at 1-0 in conference. St. Francis, and Judson 0-1 on the other side. IW, Taylor, Siena Heights all 1-0. Defiance, Lawrence Tech, and Madonna 0-1. It's still really. It feels super weird to be this late and to be this early. We've been doing this for 2 months. I feel like I should have a better grasp on this. Could Montana Tech be a lock? Okay, timeout. Could Kaiser be a lock? If Kaiser lost to Southeastern, would Kaiser still get in?
I think, well,
I would say
probably depends on this game for Southeastern, because if they lose this weekend, then yes.
Yeah.
But
I
it's
I'm pretty sure Kaiser's a lock. Montana Tech, Rocky Mountain are the 2-2-0 teams. Rocky is another one to keep your eyes on. They are 2-4 overall and 2-0 in conference. They haven't. Yeah, I know, right? So they go at MSU Northern, at home against Montana Tech, at Dakota State versus Mayville State. That Dakota State game is going to be a good one. Dakota State 2-1 in division, 5-2 overall.
Mhm.
Sorry, Matt, they're really doing good this year, even though one of their losses is to Dakota Wesleyan.
No, it's funny you say that because on my considered teams, I did actually list them against the,
Ooh.
or you know what? I probably took them off, but they were on there for a little bit. But yeah, no, they're having a really solid rebound to the year, especially with how they started. 5-2 is very impressive,
So
especially with the North Star teams and kind of how that's all shaken out. With Dickinson State kind of at the bottom of the pack, and it's Dakota State pretty much cut above the rest of them right now.
yeah, a 2-5 Dickinson State team is boggling my mind. That's not what's
Yeah.
supposed to happen here.
hmm
But yeah, that's a real interesting one to keep your eyes on as well. I don't know that I'm going to be able to call much more after this weekend.
Yeah.
No way Ottawa, Arizona's a lock, Zach says. You're undefeated, and it's going into week 8. Let's see. Wayland hasn't stunk in the Sooner. They beat them by 42. Oklahoma Panhandle has played teams tough. They beat them by 46. They beat Langston by 42. Their defense is fantastic this year. They have allowed two touchdowns in exactly one game, and that was the game against Arizona Christian. If Ottawa doesn't slip up the last week and lose to Louisiana Christian,
Well, Texas Wesleyan's the week before too. That's the other one.
right? That's what I'm
Yeah.
saying. You could feasibly lose to Tex West,
Okay.
and I think they still put Ottawa in.
They've been beating the crap out of everybody.
They right, so they've got the style points.
hmm
And this is what happens when you have a halfway decent defense in your Ottawa of Arizona. Those style points are going to play in your favor. If you lose to Louisiana Christian, obviously, you can only afford to lose one game out of the last 3. I think is fair to say. But you have the freedom to lose one game out of 3.
Yeah, that makes sense. Unless strength of record, strength of schedule plays into it.
Right. Baker's going to control their own destiny in the South and could steal a bid from the fringe teams. You still got to run through Benedictine, though.
Yeah.
And those two play November 8th in Baldwin City. That's where Baker's season, I think, comes to a close. Is right there. Derek Smith said, I don't see Baker making it unless they win the division. And again, like I said, that's going to be hard to do unless you beat Benny. Let's see. Should be Friends and McPherson from that division. Yeah, Derek Smith, you're on that one. It'll be Friends and McPherson from that division. I do think McPherson gets in, but if you fall out down the stretch,
Yeah,
it's going to be a problem. But yeah, I think that's probably those teams are your solution to the at-larges. It's just you've got one too many, and I think you've got maybe one or two of those that are going to play themselves out.
Yeah.
But I think as far as having, you know how they have like the Maxwell Award watch list? That's your watch.
Yeah.
That's your watch list for
Mhm.
the at-larges. I don't think anything is coming from outside of that pool, except for maybe Concordia of Nebraska if they decide that they're going to rock up into Elwood Olson Stadium and beat Morningside. If they do that,
I mean, completely different ball game.
right,
But
100%. I won't make the bets that other, that I'll eat a hat or anything, but that would be wild to me and would flabber all my guests. But who never flabbers my guests are our patrons.
way to get 2 runs out of that one there.
Heck yeah. Look, man, I may dilly, but I never dally with it. So our patrons are DSU Cone, Roger Meyer, Jeremy Vobble, Fred Christensen, Ace Wellen, Marty Seabolt, Kyle Gregory, Tyler Pierce, Justin Hoffman, Steve Speakman, Brian Shake, Julianne Shager, Nate Soapbeer, Stephen Cutler, Julie Lout, Tim Burrow, Nathan Moore, Ryan, Jason Crawford, Todd Nix, Sean Chamberlain, Zach Lance, Casey Willison, Carol C. Suggs, Derek Lowers, Christopher Zwiener, Joey Breckel, Coca Nicholas, and Swede Nation. If you want to join the list, please do. One. And secondly, the QR code there will take you right to. We got a ton of free members. I don't know really what you get for free. I don't give a whole ton away. But I think
Besides our knowledge.
besides
our
our knowledge,
input.
we give you everything on the live show. Which honestly, let's be perfectly fair. The fact that our preseason national champion picks have 5 losses between the two of them shows you exactly how well we can prognosticate.
Yeah.
Yeah,
we got knowledge.
Yeah.
It's mostly just me and Corey kind of poking fun at each other, but we talk about football sometimes.
Right.
So.
Which is way more fun. And we're so glad to have y'all along for the ride because y'all poke fun at us too.
Yep.
And that's fair because sometimes we deserve it.
Yeah.
Often we deserve it.
Often.
It's 2 blind squirrels finding nuts over here. Anyway, that is the end of another NAIF Ball live show. We thank you for joining us. And, well, it's going to be another fun week. Lots of great high-profile matchups. And you know good and well there's probably going to be another couple of upset picks. And we'll see what we get. And eventually the playoff picture will become clear. Thursday, Matt, we get our next rendition of the, I can't remember if it's the ARC rating or if it's the FPI.
Gotcha.
Let me look.
ARC would make sense.
ARC would make sense. Okay. So ARC releases October 23rd. The FPI releases weekly from here on out.
Okay.
But the
So we have
ARC,
both.
we do have both. But yeah, that ARC is going to be very, very interesting. Just to get an idea of who's what here. Again, though, what that's going to mean to the selection committee, especially now that they're a little more decoupled from the poll, the coaches poll, is going to be very interesting. But the ARC rating and records versus the teams ranked in the ARCs is a primary criteria. So once we start getting into early to mid-November, I think we'll have a really good idea of who's going to get in, and that's when we play the 800-mile game.
Yep.
Which, honestly, is my favorite week of the year. My favorite thing to play after the last game of the year with our viewers there. Now, that is a Patreon only. That we'll be doing a watch along, and then we get to be the guy with his red string up on the bulletin board. So, well, for that then, I am Corey Thorpe. He is Matt Schwartzler. We will see y'all on the Twitter feed.